Welcome back to our continuing discussion of JavaScript, this time primitives. Last time we saw a distinction between primitives and objects. This time we're going to concentrate just on primitives. So remember, the JavaScript primitive is a data type with a single value. We're going to look at the primitives in Chrome Developer Tools again. Last time we saw the console, the developer console. This time we're going to look at the Chrome Snippet Editor and Debugger. Alright, we're back in the browser with our familiar page. I hit Control-Shift-I and bring up Developer Tools. Here's our Element tab, and last time we looked at the Console tab and we saw how you can interact with JavaScript. It's essentially a JavaScript console where you'll see error messages here. Actually, the browser sync client that we use is causing this occasionally, and it's interfered with my work a little bit a couple of times as I get into the Developer Tools. So I'm thinking about maybe we'll uninstall this and use something else. Anyway, I want to look at the Sources tab also, which is another way you can interact in JavaScript in the browser. And this time, look at the Snippets tab. You might not see it. In fact, it might be buried underneath these double arrows here. So you want to look at the Snippets tab here. And I've created several snippets, and these are code snippets, JavaScript, and it remembers them in between sessions once you save it. So you do a new snippet here. You can give it a name at this point. If you just accept the default name, say you wanted to work up something real quick, you could. Worked up some, let's say, alert. Hello. And then Control-Enter to run. And there you see it, running. It also adds whatever code that you see, just like the console. It's interacting with the JavaScript that was on the page. It's another source of page or of scripting information to the browser. So let me make this window a little bit bigger. Close this down a little bit. All right, well, let's look at primitive data types, the script I've written here. So I wanted to display the core Java primitives, but I also wanted to just show you the snippets tag, how you create snippets and save them. Quite useful to know about. You can use this as a JavaScript sandbox essentially for your page, and maybe try out scripts here before you incorporate them into the actual scripts. So if you look over here at the windows on the right, this comes with a debugger. So I'm going to right click here and add a breakpoint. Works like debuggers you might have seen in other IDEs. Hit Control-Enter to start running, and now we're here. So I have a watch window over here. I can expand that out. V is not yet in scope. We've stopped at this line where we are declaring this a variable and setting it to the value of 1. I run one line at a time. This is step over, step into, step out of the current function. So familiar functionalities. Console.log. We'll see the console.log coming out here. That's the result down here in the console.log. It printed the value, and then type of present the type of the number. Notice that let doesn't declare the type. It just declares the variable. So what happens later on? Okay. So this time it's a floating point, and it's still a number. So the Java primitive number doesn't distinguish between integer and floating point type. Now, that might be surprising. The following element of a string will also be surprising. So now it's a string, and it's hello. What's surprising about this, there's a couple of things. Notice the fluidity here. Not only does JavaScript not distinguish between integer and floating point, JavaScript variables can take on any type. So that's why there's no type declared on line 4. The type is dynamic. It's what the type of the data. The data type still exists as a concept, as you can see here, type of. However, that data type is not fixed. That's quite different from Java, C#, C++, where the data type is declared when the variable is declared. Data type, variable name. In JavaScript, you just declare the variable name, and that variable name can change data type as it's running. The other aspect that may be surprising here is that JavaScript considers string to be a primitive type. That's different from Java and different from C#, where the string data type is an object with properties. So that's essentially the difference. Is like this string just has one value. So it's not an object, because an object has an object has two properties and not just one value in JavaScript. Let's continue. Now we're getting to the Boolean data type. So I use the triple equals comparison to set this, and now you'll see that it's true and Boolean. So 1 is equal to 1. That could be read, the triple equal sign. There's also an older form, the double equal sign, which we're familiar with from the C family of languages. It also creates a Boolean and sets the value to true. The difference between, and I have a comment here that says prefer this. And the difference is that type coercion or type conversion, if you use equal is implied. So the type conversion has rules about how the conversion is done for a Boolean comparison. And it may sometimes surprise you what is considered to be true and what is considered to be false once the conversion is done, right? So you should not use the double equals unless you have thought through the type conversion. So if you're just doing a comparison operator in normal course of coding, you want to use the triple equal version of it. There's the not equal to as well that has two equal signs instead of one. So this was a later development, and so they introduced just another equal to say, hey, we really considered this, and it's really better day-to-day programming to use to do a comparison without doing typed conversion. We'll see the difference. So that takes a string and coerces it into a number, taking care of the data type, and then it prints out true here. The version that doesn't do type conversion will print false because this requires that the types be the same, that the data types on both sides be the same. A much simpler comparison, doesn't have all the rules. So this is a little example about how the var keyword, you'll see this in a lot of tutorials. The majority of JavaScript tutorials, you'll see examples where the variable is declared using the var keyword. That's older style and not preferred. Let's see what we've done before, let. We haven't talked about var really, but again, you'll see this in JavaScript tutorials all over the place, and it's really not good modern practice. And let's see why. Okay, k is equal to 10. That should surprise you coming from a language like Java, C++, or C. Because in those languages, if you declare a variable inside curly braces, the scope of that variable is defined inside those curly braces. That is where this variable can be seen. Here we clearly see that this k was seen outside of its declaration, and that's called hoisting. So curly braces don't define scope in JavaScript, or at least they didn't in the past. If you use the let keyword in the same context, then the scoping rules that we've become used to in most programming languages hold true. So the newer keyword let allows us to have scoping rules in our language, which is a desirable behavior. So I've trying to get into the habit of using let to declare variables in JavaScript, even though you'll see var all over the place, even in relatively modern tutorials. But var has this weakness, and that is that it doesn't obey scoping rules. And this gets into a little bit, I think, this dynamic data conversion and the way these comparison operators work, also var and let. JavaScript was rushed to the market, and it was written, I think, entirely by one man, Brendan Eich at Netscape. He may have worked with people, but for the most part, very quickly developed language, brilliant work. But it had some mistakes in it, and those mistakes exist and have been tried to be repaired in JavaScript, and you see some examples of that here, the new keyword let and the triple equal sign to do comparison operators. There's a couple of new primitives also I wanted to at least mention, although we're here. The symbol type, which is used like an atom or a unique symbol. Also the big int, which could be also useful in dealing with floating point imprecision, especially in money. That's something that you can look up if you become interested in it. If you're going to do heavy money calculations in JavaScript, you really shouldn't do them in floating point. You should use int. But that's a little bit beyond our discussion. Just wanted to mention it. So next time we'll discuss the JavaScript object.